presence of the jury, the defendant and all counsel. Mr. Martinez.
Nathan Mendes, the witness stand.
Right up here, please, to be sworn. Right up here.
Okay, can you spell your first and last name, please?
Nathan, N-A-T-H-A-N. Last name's M-E-N-D-E-S.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Walk right around here and have a seat, please. You may proceed.
Your name, sir?
Nathan Mendes.
And who do you work for?
I'm a special agent for the United States Department of the Interior.
And what is your area that you work, physically speaking or geographically speaking? What area do you work?
I work in Northern California in the city of Redding.
Back in June and July of 2008, who were you working for?
I was a detective for the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office.
And as being a detective with Siskiyou, what were your duties back then?
I was the lead detective in the Major Crimes Unit and responsible for investigating homicides, robberies, kidnappings, major sex offenses.
And did you live in what town did you live in back then?
I lived in a town called Etna, which is just outside of Wairika.
And Wairika, is it a big town or a small town?
It's a small town.
How many people would you say back in June of 2008 were there?
About 7,500.
And Siskiyou County, is that a small or large county?
Geographically, it's large. As far as population goes, it's very small.
And back then, do you have any idea about how many people there were?
About 60,000.
And did you have occasion to patrol, I guess, or be around the whole of Siskiyou County on occasion as part of your duties and socially?
Yes, sir.
And with regard to, let's start with Wairika first. In Wairika, is there a business establishment, a bar, a restaurant by the name of Margaritaville?
No, sir.
So there is no restaurant by the name of Margaritaville there?
No, sir.
How about in the whole of the county of Siskiyou? Is there a restaurant by the name of Margaritaville?
No, sir.
In this case, did you become involved in the investigation involving somebody by the name of Jodi Arias?
Yes, sir.
And when were you contacted?
On July 11th of 2008.
And when you were contacted, what is it that you began to do as part of this contact that you received?
The detective sergeant from the Mesa Police Department said that he was bringing a team of detectives to the Wairika area for a follow-up investigation, and he requested that we try to establish a residence or location for their suspect.
What was the suspect's name?
Jodi Arias.
And did you subsequently come to know and meet and see who Jodi Arias is?
Yes, sir.
Is she in court today?
Yes, sir.
Tell me where she is seated and what she is wearing.
Seated next to defense counsel. She's wearing looks like a brown and green shirt.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the identification of the defendant?
Yes.
And with regard to that particular investigation, were you able to establish or find out where she was living?
Yes, sir.
Where was she living back there? And it was July of 2008, right?
Correct.
Where was she living?
She was living at 352 Pine Street in the city of Wairika.
Do you know who else was living in that house?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Her grandparents?
Anybody else other than her and her grandparents?
Not that I know of, sir.
And as part of this investigation, was it also established where she was working at the time?
Yes, sir.
Where was she working?
At Casa Ramos.
And Casa Ramos, what town is that in?
There's several of them. There's at least two of them in the county, and one of them is located in Wairika.
And has Casa Ramos ever been known as Margaritaville?
No, sir.
And the marquee for Casa Ramos, does it have a marquee for the name of the restaurant?
Yes, sir.
Does it say anywhere in the marquee Casa de Ramos? I mean, does it say anywhere in the marquee, Margaritaville?
No, sir.
And have you ever eaten at Casa Ramos?
Yes, sir, I have.
With regard to this investigation, what date was the defendant arrested?
On the 15th.
Of July?
Yes, sir.
And as part of that investigation, did you have occasion to assist in the execution of a search warrant at her home?
Yes, sir.
Let me show you some photographs. While we're doing that, you were present. Who else was present during the execution of the warrant?
Detective Tom Denning from the Mesa Police Department and crime scene investigator Dave Young.
And there were photographs taken, correct?
Yes, sir.
As part of this investigation and subsequent to the execution of the search warrant, did you prepare a photographic lineup?
Yes, I did.
And with regard to that photographic lineup, did you use the known photograph of the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Where did you get that photograph?
Off of our law enforcement intranet, I retrieved a photo from booking.
Booking associated with this case, right?
Yes, sir.
And were you there when she was being booked and photographed on July 15th of 2008?
Yes, sir.
Let me show you an exhibit. Exhibit 245, why don't you go ahead and open it and see if you're familiar with the contents.
Yes, sir.
What is in Exhibit 2, or what is Exhibit 245?
It's a photographic lineup that I prepared and a photographic lineup admonition or instructions.
All right, but it appears that you have 3 sheets of paper. Why do you have 3 sheets of paper and not 2 as you mentioned?
One of them is the instructions that are given
Right.
to the person viewing the lineup. One is the actual lineup with 6 photographs.
Okay.
And the third sheet is a control page that has the identifying information for the target.
And in this case, Jodi Arias was the target, correct?
Yes, sir.
What position did you place her photograph?
She's in position 5.
If I may have that back. I move for the admission of Exhibit 245.
Objection.
Exhibit 245 is admitted.
The first one that you have here is this document here, correct?
Yes, sir.
It has a number and some letters and a number next to them. What is this ENM005? What is that?
That's a number that I assigned to it. It indicates that it's an item of evidence, and my initials NM and item number 5.
And it does have the name of a person who viewed this particular lineup, right?
Yes, sir.
And there's a date here on the left-hand side. Is that the date that the person viewed the lineup, or is that the date that the lineup was completed?
Well, that would be the date that they viewed the lineup. However, that date's incorrect.
And what is the correct date?
It was the 17th, not the 16th.
All right. Why don't you read to us this? Is this what is called an admonition? Is this what you read in anticipation of reading the photographic lineup to somebody?
Yes, sir, and that's just so we don't influence the person viewing this to pick anybody in here who might be the suspect.
Okay, and you read this to an individual by the name of Rafael Colombo, correct?
Yes, sir.
And why don't you read it for us so that we know what it says?
It's titled Photographic Lineup Instructions. You're about to be shown a group of photographs. Before you view these photographs, please read the following carefully. Number one, because a law enforcement officer is showing you a group of photographs, this should not influence your judgment in any way. Number two, the person who committed the crime may or may not be in the group of photographs. Number three, you are in no way obligated to identify anyone. Number four, study each photograph carefully before making any comments. Consider that the photographs could be old or new, that hairstyles change, and that persons can alter their identity by growing or shaving facial hair. And number five is special instructions, which there were none.
If I may have that back. We were about to talk about the execution of the search warrant. I was going to show you some photographs of the defendant's home on Pine Street. Please take a look at exhibits 317 through 320 and see if you recognize these photographs.
Yes, sir. So these are scene photographs.
And these were photographs taken at the time of the execution of the search warrant on the defendant's home back on, what was it, July 15th of 2008?
That's correct.
Move for the admission of exhibits 317 through 320.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibits 317 through 320 are admitted.
Let's take a look at these photographs. This is for the glare. Let's start with exhibit 317. And what's the focus is, what are we looking at here?
This is an overall photograph of the exterior or the front of the house at 352 Pine Street.
And exhibit 318, what are we looking at here?
This is a shot of the interior of the house looking down the hallway from the front door to the back door.
So this shot is, if we look at 317, this shot is taken from this door looking towards the back, correct?
Correct.
And this door that we see here in the back, does it lead to another room inside the house or does it lead to the outside?
It leads outside into the backyard.
Exhibit 319, where does this door lead to?
That is the front door, sir.
The defendant's room, where was it in this house? We know that if you go straight, you go to the back, right?
Correct.
Where is her room?
It's in the photograph. As soon as you come in the front door, you make an immediate left.
And then do you go left again, or you just keep going straight in there? Is that the room right here?
That's the room there. It goes back, kind of like you're making a U-turn towards the front
Kind
of
of
the
like
house.
this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then Exhibit 320 shows us the area and some of the places searched, right?
Yes, sir.
Did police have occasion to search this box here?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you some documents. With regard to exhibits 237-001 through 237-022, it's this bundle here. Take a look at those and see if you recognize those items.
Yes, sir. These are items taken during the service of the search warrant.
And did they come from this box here?
Yes, I did.
I move for the admission of exhibits 237.001 through 237.002. I'm sorry, 022.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibits 237.001 through 237.022 are admitted.
Let's take a look at exhibit 237.001. First of all, what's the logo up on the left-hand corner?
It's a budget logo.
And it says it's budget rent-a-car system, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a budget rent-a-car in Wairika or not?
No, sir.
Back in June of 2008, were there car rental companies in Wairika?
Yes, sir. There are at least two others.
What were their names?
There was Hertz Rental Car and Enterprise.
And that was back in June of 2008.
Yes, sir.
But there was no budget, right?
No, sir.
Then we see that there's an address there and it says Redding, California. Are you familiar with Redding, California?
Yes, sir.
In fact, do you live near Redding now or not?
Yes, I do.
And with regard to Redding as it relates to Wairika, how far apart are they?
Just under 90 miles.
And approximately what's the driving time between Wairika and Redding, California?
In the summertime, it's about an hour and a half drive.
And why did you qualify it by saying in the summertime? Is it in the winter? Is it a little bit more or what?
It's quite a bit more.
Why is that?
Just due to the weather, Siskiyou County, especially southern Siskiyou County, gets a lot of snow.
And we're talking about what was rented here. Do you see what was rented there? See what it says there? It was a car, right?
Correct, sir.
And it was rented. We have something up here, a bunch of numbers. And what are the last the last four digits?
2015.
The date that the car was rented, do you see that?
Yes, sir.
What date was that?
The 2nd of June, 2008,
At what time of the morning?
8:04 a.m.
And then, when was it returned?
It was returned on the 7th of June, 2008.
At 13:08 hours. Is that 1:08 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
But it was due in at what time?
It was due in on the 7th at 9:30 in the morning.
So it was a little late then, right?
Yes, sir.
How many total miles were driven on the car as indicated by this document?
2,834.
And this is the document that was found in that box that we talked about, correct?
Yes, sir.
It does talk here of the method of payment. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And it does say, what words does it say there?
Master,
And then it has four numbers. What are those?
2015.
With regard to the rental of this car, did you have occasion to then go to the budget rental car that's in Redding, California at 6751 Woodrum Circle?
Yes, sir. That's actually located at the Redding Municipal Airport.
And was this the lineup that you took?
Yes, sir. I was there 2 days in a row. The lineup was shown on the second day I was there.
All right. So it was shown on the 17th of July, correct?
Correct.
And this is the photograph of the target, I think is what you told us, right?
Yes, sir.
And this was taken at the time of the booking on July 15th?
Yes, sir.
And you were there when it was taken?
Yes, sir.
There are some chicken scratches underneath that. You see that?
Yes, I do.
The photographic lineup, before it was shown to anybody, did it have those chicken scratches on it?
No, sir.
Who put the chicken scratches on there, if you know?
That would have been Joe Colombo, or Rafael Colombo is his legal name.
With regard to that individual, did you read him the admonition that you previously read in court?
Yes, sir.
And when you showed him this photographic lineup, was he the individual that placed those initials there after the admonition was read?
Yes, sir.
Did he say anything with regard to the identification at the time that you showed him this photographic lineup and he made those marks?
Objection, call for hearsay.
Overruled. Can we answer yes or no?
So, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Yes. Question.
I'll do it this way. What did he say with regard to that photographic lineup when he was making his identification?
Objection, call for hearsay.
Please approach. See,
What did he say when you showed him that in terms of the identification?
He said the person that came in and rented the vehicle was number 5, except that she had blonde hair when she came in and got the car, and she had a man with him.
With regard to what you just said, did he say that she had long hair or blonde hair? I
No,
didn't.
blonde hair.
Take a look at one of the, and the vehicle that you were talking about is the one that's mentioned in 237.001, correct?
Yes, sir.
This photographic lineup, you see this one here? This is the 3rd page of your packet. Do you see it?
Yes, sir.
There's some identifying information here. Do you see that at the bottom?
Yes, I do.
Was this ever shown to Mr. Colombo at any time?
No, sir.
And this is something, could this be called a control document?
Yes, sir.
And when I say control, what do you mean by control?
We use this so we can identify the people that are in the lineup. They're given a identifying number, which is over on the left-hand side of that page. And then the person that we're trying to identify, their name and information's on the lineup as well under primary candidate.
Okay. And was this ever shown to Mr. Colombo?
No, sir.
And the only one that's shown to him is this one that is blank.
Correct.
Exhibit 237001 indicates that the day the car was rented was what again?
The June 2nd, 2008,
At what time in the morning?
8:04 a.m.
In that box that we've talked about, and if we go back to exhibit 320 in her room, this box here, were there other receipts?
Yes, sir.
Take a look at exhibit 237002. Was that in that box?
Yes, sir.
And it is from where?
The Siskiyou Food Mart, which is the Shell gas station at the corner of Fort Jones Road and Moonlit Oaks.
And how big is Wairika? Is it a big town in terms of geography, or is it a smaller town?
It's fairly small.
And the date that this purchase was made,
June 2nd, 2008.
at what time?
Says 0539.
So is that 5:39 in the morning?
I don't know.
Well, if it's 0539 as opposed to 1739.
Objection answered in the foundation. He's not familiar with the receipts.
sustained.
Are you familiar with military time?
Yes, sir.
What is 1739 hours in terms of the regular clock, if you will?
That's 5:39 in the p.m.
Okay. And does this say 5:39 or does it say 17:39?
It says 5:39.
And it does list an account. It says MasterCard. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And it lists 4 digits. What are those 4 digits?
2015.
If we go back to exhibit number 237.001, what are the 4 digits there?
2015.
And what was purchased here? Can you tell?
Yes, sir. Fuel.
All right. Let's take a look at exhibit 237.003. And it's from where?
This is a McDonald's in Lodi, California.
Do you know where Lodi, California is in relationship to Wairika?
Yes, sir.
Where is it?
Lodi is located in between State Route 99 and Interstate 5. It's right outside Sacramento.
Is Sacramento south of Wairika or north?
It's south of Wairika.
And so this would also be south of Wairika, Lodi, California, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the date of this receipt is what?
June 2nd, 2008.
And it does say MON, right?
Yes, sir.
And it has 1932 hours, right?
Correct.
What time would that be if we're using the regular clock?
It would be 7:32 p.m.
And see what was purchased.
A large French fry and one bottle of water.
Take a look at exhibit 237.004, and this is to Valero, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the date on that one?
June 2nd, 2008,
And the time?
8:41 p.m.
And what kind of card was used?
MasterCard,
What are the last four digits?
2015.
And it also has a name here, right?
Yes, sir.
What's the name?
Jodi Arias.
And then if we go back to exhibit 237.001, do the MasterCard numbers match?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit number 237.005 involves, what's on the left? Do you see that? It's WAMU. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what WAMU is?
Yes, sir. It's a Washington Mutual. It's a bank.
And we have here a deposit of how much?
$400.
And where? Do you see the name there?
Yes, sir. It's a Washington Mutual on Alvarado Street in Monterey, California.
In terms of Monterey, California, as opposed to Lodi, California, where are they in relation to each other, geographically speaking?
Well, Lodi is located basically in the Central Valley of California, right in the middle, and Monterey is south and on the coastal area of California.
And the date that we have here is what, sir?
The June 3rd, 2008,
And the time right there?
10:10.
Exhibit number 237.006, is it to the same bank
Yes, sir.
and the same location in Monterey?
Correct.
And is the time the same, 10:11?
No, sir. It's a minute off, 10:11.
And the date is June 3rd, right?
Correct, sir.
And then it has some writings on there and it shows another deposit, right?
Yes, sir. $300.
Exhibit number 237.007 again involves Washington Mutual, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is this also another deposit?
Yes, sir. Of $100.
And June 3rd at what time?
10:15.
So in terms of the total amount of deposits, we have $100 there. Exhibit 237.006, deposit of 300, which would be total 400, right?
Yes, sir.
And then exhibit 237.005, another deposit of 400. And if it was all left in there, how much would that add up to be? 800?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit number 237.008 is to Walmart, right?
Yes, sir.
And what is the date on that one?
June 3rd, 2008.
And the time?
15:22 hours, which would be 3:22 p.m.
And these previous ones, if they are military time, 237.007 is what time does it say there?
If it was military time, it'd be 10:15 a.m.
Exhibit number 237.009 is to who?
The CVS pharmacy.
And where is this location now?
This is located at 3883 East Foothill Boulevard, Pasadena, California.
In relationship to the places that we've seen, the last one that we saw, Monterey, where is Pasadena in relationship to Monterey?
It's south of it.
And the time on this one is what time?
June 3rd, 2008 at 8:31 p.m.
Exhibit number 237.010 or 010. Can you see who the merchant is?
Yes, sir. Starbucks,
And what town does it say?
Pasadena, California.
And it says that a MasterCard was used, right?
Yes, sir.
What are the last four digits that are listed there?
2015.
And just to go back to 237.001, what are the last four digits there?
2015.
And the date?
June 3rd, 2008,
At what time?
2041, which would be 8:41 p.m.
Exhibit number 237.001, another receipt. This one's to who?
Arco,
What town?
Pasadena, California.
And we see that a debit was used and the last four numbers are
2015.
purchase of fuel, it appears, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's look at the time on that one. It is
June 3rd, 2008 at 8:42 p.m.
exhibit number 237.012. It's also to an ARCO, right?
Yes, sir.
The address there is what?
3706 East Foothill Boulevard, Pasadena, California.
If we look at 237.011, do the addresses match?
Yes, sir.
In this one, we're talking about fuel. And then this one talks about an initial payment and some prepay, right?
Yes, sir.
What time?
This one is at 2046, which is 8:46 p.m.
And what is the date?
June 3rd, 2008.
It does talk about some fuel that is purchased, right? There also, correct?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit number 237.013. Does this appear to be a duplicate of what we've just seen? And I'll show you 237.012. It appears to be a duplicate, or it may be a duplicate of the sale, right?
Yes, sir. The fuel amount's different.
Exhibit 237.014. First of all, what's the date on this one?
June 6th, 2008,
At what time?
10:38 a.m.
And what's the merchant?
It's an In-N-Out Burger in Sparks.
You know where Sparks is?
Yes, sir.
Where? What state?
Nevada, just outside of Reno.
And it indicates that a CHB was purchased, a W, and an FF, right?
Yes, sir.
And there was a MasterCard that was used, and then the price, correct?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit number 237.01 is also from the In-N-Out Burger, right?
Yes, sir.
It gives an address and says Sparks, Nevada, it says credit sale, and it indicates the name of the person who made the purchase, right?
Yes, sir.
Who is that?
Jodi Arias,
What's the last four digits of the account?
2015.
And then it gives the date and the time at the bottom, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the time on this one?
10:43 a.m.
Exhibit 237.016 is to, what's the merchant's name?
Tesoro.
You know, and if we look down there, it gives us the card that was used, what are the last four digits,
2015.
and the person.
Jodi Arias.
It appears that it talks about pump 2 in gallons, right?
Yes, sir.
And the date,
June 6, 2008.
at what time?
3:57.
And if this were military time, what time of the day would it be?
3:57 a.m.
Exhibit 237.017, also a Tesoro purchase, right?
Yes, sir.
And we have a purchase of what appears to be fuel, right?
Yes, sir.
And it indicates that a MasterCard was swiped by, who is the account holder?
Jodi Arias,
And the last four digits,
2015.
and the date again.
June 6, 2008.
Exhibit number 237.018 is, who is the merchant?
The Flying J.
And it's from where?
It's a 1880 West Winnemucca Boulevard in Winnemucca, Nevada.
Do you know where this is or not?
Yes, sir.
Where is Winnemucca in relationship to Sparks, Nevada?
It's east. It's basically located in the middle of Nevada, up in the northern part of the state.
And we have the date there, correct?
Yes, sir.
We also have Exhibit 237.019. It talks about the same
Yes, sir.
merchant, right?
Correct.
And it's a little bit faded, right?
Yes, sir.
But on the right-hand side, can you make out the name or not?
Yes, sir. Jodi Arias.
Exhibit 237.020 is to, what's the merchant?
7-Eleven.
And also in Sparks, Nevada, right?
Yes, sir.
And the time that it was used was what time?
10:34.
And the date?
June 6, 2008.
237.021 is now to another Valero, right?
Yes, sir.
This one is in what town?
Redding, California.
What's the date on this one?
June 7, 2008.
And the time?
12:20.
And the person that's listed there?
Jodi Arias.
What kind of credit card was involved?
MasterCard.
And it appears to be a purchase of gas, right?
Yes, sir.
And finally, Exhibit 237.022. It's just a receipt, but we really can't tell much from it, right?
Correct, sir.
I don't have any other questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
I just wanted to ask you, counsel for the state went through, excuse me, a lot of receipts with you and matched up the number of the credit card, that sort of thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Based on your experience on what you testified here today, if someone paid with cash, there wouldn't be a credit card number on there, would there?
Correct.
Okay. I want to draw your attention back for a moment. You recall that Mr. Martinez showed you some receipts from Washington Mutual and Monterey. Remember looking at those?
Yes, sir.
And just to remind everyone, these are what you obtained from Miss Arias's room back in Wairika, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you see that receipt, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you do us a favor and read the last 4 digits of the account that was being deposited into?
Yes, sir. 7148.
And do you see the account number there again?
Yes, sir.
And is that the same account number?
It is.
Okay. And again, it appears the account number is different. Could you read that account number for us?
Yes, sir. It's 8006.
So it appears that's a different account, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let me ask you this. I know your former employer had a limited involvement in this case. That's a good way to put it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you seen any of the other documents related to where the money came from to make these deposits?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
Any questions from the jury for this witness? I see no hands. You may step down. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Your Honor.
State may call its next witness.
State calls Lisa Perry.
Can you spell your first and last name, please?
Lisa Perry, Lisa Perry, Perry.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Walk around and have a seat.
May I have your name, please?
My name is Lisa Perry.
And who do you work for?
I work for the City of Mesa Police Department Crime Laboratory.
What do you do there at the Mesa Police Crime Lab?
I am a forensic scientist.
That could mean a lot of things. What do you do there, though?
I work in the biology unit, which means that I examine evidence of a crime for the presence of biological materials. I am the first step in the process, the DNA process. So I look at a piece of evidence, look for substances such as blood, semen, saliva, maybe even skin cells, and I collect a sample and forward it on for DNA analysis.
Is that the only thing that you do?
On occasion, I do respond to crime scenes.
And in this particular case, did you respond to the crime scene involving the killing of Travis Alexander?
Yes, I did.
With regard to that scene, when did you get out there?
On June 10th of 2008,
And how long were you at that scene in June?
over the course of 2 days.
And during the time that you were out there, what is it that you were focused on, or what is it that you were doing, if you will?
We were looking at blood, I was looking at blood stains to see if I could make a determination on how they were deposited at the scene.
Is there a degree, well, do you have a degree?
I do have a degree. It's in marine biology from Western Washington University, and I have a minor in chemistry.
Is there such a degree in the interpretation of blood stain patterns or blood pattern, or is that something that you acquire through training and reading?
It is something you would acquire through training and experimentation and reading.
In this particular case, you went there, and what is it that you saw? Where did you start?
We entered through the front door and toured the residence. However, my focus was in the master bathroom.
And why were you looking at the master bathroom? What is it that you were doing, and why were you interested in looking at that?
I was interested in looking at the blood stains, and that's where the blood was.
You also mentioned that you do some do you know what a screener is?
Yes.
What is a screener?
Screener is kind of what I described my job to be, the person who looks at an item of evidence and then prepares a sample for DNA from that item.
When you say that you prepare them for DNA analysis, how is it that you go about doing it? I mean, there could be many substances, many areas. What is it that you do exactly?
Depending on what I'm looking for, I may do some testing. Otherwise, I might just swab a substance or take a cutting of it and forward it on in a little tiny tube that goes on for DNA.
Let me see if I can get a little bit more specific. For example, if you see a substance that is reddish in color and you want to know what it may potentially be, is there any kind of test that you can conduct that will tell you that maybe this may or may not be blood? Is there anything that you do for that?
There is a test. There's a little color test that I do that will give me indications of whether the presence of blood is indicated.
And are you familiar with the term Castlemeyer?
Yes, that is the name of my color test.
And is it also known as a presumptive test?
It is.
In this case, at the scene, did you do any swabbing to obtain any biological substance from the scene, or was everything done back at the lab?
There was swabbings that I did not perform by other people who were at the scene. A lot of my analysis and swabbings would have occurred back in the laboratory.
I'm just asking about you. Were there any swabbings that you did out at the scene?
I did a few of the preliminary color testings at the scene, but I did not collect any evidence.
And what areas did you do with that Castlemeyer test or that presumptive test? What areas?
There was an area on a washing machine, on a sink in a downstairs restroom, on a cabinet in the downstairs restroom, on the back of the master bedroom door, the top banister of the stairs, the base of the stairs on some tile. I'd have to reference my report to see if I'm missing anything.
We'll let you do that, but with regard to the washing machine, do you know what the results were from the presumptive tests?
There was one stain on the top that was positive.
And with regard to that, would you have put like an initial, or what would you have done to designate that particular spot?
The person who collected that sample would have designated that with initials.
So take a look at exhibits 8, 9, and 10. We're looking at the stain there, right?
Correct.
And then if we take a look at the washing machine, there are a couple of numbers there. Did you put those numbers there or no?
No.
Somebody else would have done it,
Yes.
but you would have done the swabbing with that,
Correct.
right?
The testing. Yes.
And number 10, what does the little B mean there?
That it differentiates it from the 1A that was on the other surface of the washing machine.
And what were the results again with regard to the swabbing of the washing machine?
This one, to confirm, I believe that this one was positive and the other was negative.
And then you said that you went, where did you look from there?
Throughout the rest of the residence as well, focusing on the master bathroom.
But downstairs in the bedroom, did you also conduct a testing for blood there and using the presumptive test, i.e. the Castlemeyer?
You said the downstairs in the bedroom or the bathroom?
Downstairs bathroom.
Downstairs bathroom, I did a test on a stain in the sink that was positive, and there was a negative on a cabinet.
Okay, if we take a look at exhibits numbers 44, 45, and 46. 44 is what? What are we looking at there?
That would be the cabinet in the downstairs bathroom.
Was that positive or negative?
That was negative.
Exhibit number 45, and then, let's see, focus in, exhibit number 46. Is that what you tested?
Yes, and that was positive.
Then you said you went throughout the house and you looked at a number of areas, right? But focusing mainly in the master bathroom, right?
Correct, that's correct.
In the master bathroom, just to the naked eye, not to denigrate your profession, but just looking at it, all that red stuff there, just to the naked eye, appears to be blood. Did you do a lot of this Castlemeyer testing up there or not?
We did not. Due to our training, education, and experience, I am able to recognize the presence of blood in that volume, and I recognize that to be blood.
So with regard to the study of blood patterns, what kind of training have you had?
I have received a 40-hour course in basic bloodstain pattern analysis from the Miami-Dade Metropolitan Police Department. I received a follow-up 40-hour course in advanced bloodstain pattern analysis by the Miami-Dade Metropolitan Police Department as well. I received an 80-hour course in laboratory-based bloodstain pattern analysis, as it relates to fabric specifically. And I have attended over 200 hours of educational conferences and trainings associated with bloodstain pattern analysis.
Before we get too much into that, I'm going to show you exhibit number 138. Do you recognize the area there?
Yes, I do.
And exhibit 139, what are we looking at there?
That is a photo of the west wall of the master hall bathroom, master bathroom hallway.
Was there a latent fingerprint that was there that was people looked at, or do you know anything about that?
I know that there was a print involved in that area. I don't know exactly what it was a print of.
Did you do anything with regard to that area there in this particular item back at the scene?
At the scene, I did not.
And how about at the lab? Did you do anything?
At the laboratory, I did my Castlemeyer testing and did a swabbing in that area where I was instructed where I should swab by the latent print examiner.
Right, but did you do some swabbing of this back at the lab?
Just at the lab, yes.
And what were the results of this preliminary test that you did?
Those results were negative.
Okay. Had there been any testing that you know of to this area prior to your testing for blood?
I'm unaware of any testing, only processing.
In terms of the screening, you said, well, it's negative for blood. Just because it's negative for blood, does that mean that there are no other biological materials there subject to DNA testing? In other words, is blood the only biological substance that can be tested for DNA?
No, it's not.
What other substances can be tested for DNA?
You can receive a DNA profile from skin cells from somebody touching something. Sometimes your sweat will have your DNA as it sloughs off. You can have.
What is that called? What are those? Is that nucleated or what is that called? If the cells fall off, what are those? They're just cells or what?
They're epithelial cells that have come off, and usually through sweat, wear, or I'm not coming up with the right terms. Often I will find them on a screwdriver because somebody has used friction, so that forces and rubs off your skin cells.
How about spit, saliva? Does that have DNA in
Yes,
it?
yes, saliva would have DNA in it.
How about, I don't know, sperm, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, yes.
So it isn't just restricted to blood then, right?
That's correct.
So if you swab this particular area and there was no blood, that doesn't mean there wasn't any biological substance there.
That's correct.
So to get back to you told me a little bit about your training. In the terms of blood, the way it's deposited there, is that something that you can, by looking at them, you can tell how they were deposited there?
We can offer opinions as to how the mechanisms that may have caused those stains, yes.
Okay, but I'm asking you, when you look at it, are you able to do it? It's the royal we here, and I want to make sure that we're talking about you. You can look at something and at least tell us what type of pattern we're talking
The type of pattern and what may have caused that mechanism.
Are there some patterns that are passive as opposed to active?
There are.
Okay, why don't we talk a little bit about the passive type of patterns that you may find at a crime scene? What are those?
The passive category of blood stain patterns are ones that when blood droplets are only acted upon by the source of gravity, they form by gravity alone, so they're just dropping by that force alone.
So for example, if the source, whatever the source may be, is standing over something, not making any movement, and the blood comes down, it forms a certain type of pattern.
Yes, a passive drop.
How about if active forms of blood patterns? What are those?
Those would be under a category we call projected blood when there's an ejection of a volume of blood due to a force or to pressure that causes that to strike the surface.
Give me some examples of what we're talking about.
That could be when there is an impact or a strike or a blow to a blood source. It could be when there is a weapon and it's moving back and forth and blood may be flying off of it. It can be from when one coughs and has blood in their airwaves. That can cause that a projection of blood stains as well.
In terms of the pattern that may be created by this blood being projected, is there a special name for that or not? Is it high velocity, medium velocity? Do you know what that's about?
We can assess the sizes of the stains, and that helps us define the force that might have acted upon that blood, and then we categorize that by the sizes as high velocity, low velocity, medium velocity.
And are you familiar with the term spatter?
Yes, I am.
Not splatter, it's spatter actually.
Spatter.
And what does splatter refer to?
What is spatter?
What does it refer to? Yeah.
Spatter is the actual stains that we look at after there has been an action to a liquid blood source, and the blood droplets fly and are dispersed through the air. When they finally land upon a surface, that is called the spatter.
In terms of, let's say there's blood on a substance and something comes by and touches it. Is there a name for that? And what would that name be?
That's called a transfer stain. When a blood-bearing source comes in contact with another source, that's called a transfer.
What if the blood is already there and the source doesn't have any blood on them and they come by? Is it still called a transfer?
They're still within the transfer category. Specifically, if the blood is already on an object and something wipes through it, that's called a wipe. If the blood is on, say, me, and I'm moving it along here, I am swiping it along.
What if, for example, the blood is adulterated, and by that I mean another substance is applied to it? For example, let's say water is applied to blood. Does that have a tendency to affect or not affect the patterns in what you see?
Well, if water is present, it may actually diminish and wash away any of the patterns that we might expect to see, that we might see in a bloody crime scene. It also can affect the appearance of stains by making their edges look very dilute, not as dark red. They might be very dilute red in appearance.
Okay, I'm going to show you some photographs. Sort of just to orient ourselves, exhibit number 83. And you see this right here down at the...
Yes, I do.
What is that?
That is the body of the deceased.
And this right here, did that have the appearance of blood to you?
Yes, it did.
Now, we've been talking about all these patterns and cast off and speeds and that sort of thing, active versus passive. First thing we sort of see is this right here. What, if that were blood, what would that tell us?
That there's a large enough volume that it is flowing down, that gravity is acting upon it.
And do we know how that got there? Because we've talked about something hitting something and then flying on there. Is there anything that we know about this one other than that gravity acted upon it?
No.
Exhibit number 84, and I want to direct you to this area here. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And closer view, Exhibit 86, the area there. Exhibit 87, that's a close-up of that area. And then Exhibit 88, which is the toilet. Do you know where this toilet was?
Yes.
And Exhibit 89. Are we still looking at the toilet?
Yes.
Want to talk about this particular spot, and then you see in the back appears to be blood. Why don't you tell me what type of pattern we are looking at there?
The stains that I see on the toilet and the bottom of this door jamb are from an impact to a blood source.
Is this an active sort of?
It would be an
Pattern?
active source, yes.
And so it's the blood being what? How does the blood get there?
There is an impact to the blood source of some sort that then causes the blood droplets to fly through the air and be deposited upon that surface.
Impact, right?
An impact, correct.
Can you, by looking at those, can you tell us the distance of the source to that location?
I can't define specifically, but I can tell you because they are small blood droplets at the bottom, those don't travel very far due to the effect of wind resistance upon them, air resistance. So they're not wind resistance, air resistance. So they're not going to travel very far. So the blood source was in proximity too.
And any idea how far, or is it in proximity?
In proximity, close proximity.
Where was can you tell us anything about the blood source, its positioning as in terms of high up, middle, ceiling, floor? What can you tell us about that?
Those stains are all from about 12 inches and down, and the stains that I was looking at are all round, which means that the blood source was actually low, and those blood stains simply flew to the side and impacted the wall at a 90-degree angle, and they made it essentially circular drops.
So what I understand you say, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the source was low, source was not too far away because of the smaller droplets there, and there was impact to the blood source.
That's correct.
Well, let's look at the toilet that's back there.
Yes.
With regard to that, if we take a look at exhibit number 90, there's the toilet, and number 90. What do we see here?
We see the same type of stains, fairly round, on a rounded surface like the side of the toilet. They can round, even though they might hit at a 90-degree angle, those can sometimes look a little bit more elliptical just because of the surface of the curved toilet. But those are essentially the small stains that I was talking about at the other, on the door jamb, and at the same height, they are below 12 inches.
Looking at these and the ones on the toilet, exhibit 87, spatially speaking, they're in different areas, correct?
Correct.
Does that tell you anything about the number of strikes to the blood source, or does it not?
Because the way that these are lined up and you can see in the photograph, I can't rule that out as having been from the same event. It could be from more than one event, but it's at least, I can't rule out that it was simply one.
When you say event, are we talking about strikes?
One strike to that blood source.
But it could be more.
It could be more.
Take a look at exhibit number 84. Do you see this floor mat here? Or, I'll show you another one.
Not in that lighting. I didn't.
Exhibit number 86. Do you see the floor mat
Yes, I
there?
do.
With regard to that floor mat, did you conduct any tests?
I didn't do any tests on that at the scene.
The way you said that implies to me that you did some tests somewhere else.
I did examine that mat back in the laboratory.
And exactly what did you do to examine that floor mat?
I did my Kastle-Meyer preliminary test for the presence of blood, and I noted the presence of blood all over the bottom of that mat, in addition to the stain that's on top.
With regard to that mat, you were looking at that mat. Is it a situation where the blood was on top and then went to the bottom, or do you have a different opinion as to how the blood on the bottom got there?
No, the blood is throughout the bottom, and it's not consistent with the top drop having traveled through. It's more consistent with that mat having been moved either over blood stains that were already there, or there had been water in the scene, and that water mixed with the blood could have traveled under and deposited throughout the mat.
I hear you saying that there's two ways that the blood could have been deposited underneath the mat then.
Correct.
And one of them is moving, right?
Moving, yes.
Well, just because it's moving, that doesn't make blood magically appear, does it?
No.
What is it that it's coming in contact with that would allow it to then get under there?
Blood stains that would already be present.
So in other words, one of the scenarios is that there was blood somewhere else and this mat was run over them, right?
Correct.
And the other one was what?
That with the water involvement that I can see, you can see it in this picture, the way that it's affected that other stain. That
one right
water and blood had traveled
Ma'am,
together.
is this stain
Yes.
and then this is
Yes,
the water
the edges
involvement?
that are red and dilute looking.
Well, just so that we can focus in on that. What do you see there that tells you that there's water been there? How do you know that? It just looks like a dark stain with some reddish stains.
Because that has been, water would cause that effect to start to loosen up the blood and start it to diffuse. To be dilute in appearance. So it's starting to dilute that large stain.
And so what you're saying is there's a proximity between the mat and that, which implies that maybe water was one way it got there, or the other one is that it was moved, right?
Correct.
Did you take a look at the consistency? And by that I mean whether or not the blood could have traveled from the top to the bottom. Did you take a look at that? Is it that type of mat that the blood could have gone?
The top is all bamboo strips, and that's what the blood on top of the mat was laying on top of. The bottom has a felt type middle and then a fabric edge, and it's not the kind that the blood would not have traveled from that one drop through the bottom.
Well, we're talking about this scenario. One of the things that we talked about previously, or when you were explaining this to me, you indicated that, well, if there is a blood source somewhere and another item comes by that doesn't have any blood on it, if it rubs up against it, the blood can be transferred, right?
Correct.
So the first, I guess, explanation would be that this would be a blood transfer. Would that be correct?
Correct.
And then the other one would be water, right?
Correct.
Taking a look at this item there, along with the one that's here around the corner, we then take a look at exhibit number 91. Do you see both of those?
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about this one right here. What are we looking at there?
That is a large accumulation of blood.
And how was that blood left there? How did the source leave the blood there?
One of two ways. One of the likelier options is that a blood source was in one position, allowing it to drip down and collect in that area.
And so that's the gravity aspect.
That would be,
of it.
yes, that the blood source just dripped passively the blood. The other being, I can't account for all of the situations with water, how water would, and this tile would pull it together, but I can't totally dismiss that some of the water activity deposited it there, though it seems more likely due to the size of it that it was deposited from a blood source.
If it was deposited there from the blood source, and you did say it was a large amount of blood there, is that a function of time also, that to get a larger blood spot like this takes more time than to just get a spot, for example, if this were one strike, than to get this pattern? Could it be a function of time?
It could be a function of time.
And I suspect that the answer is you can't give me a time.
I can't give you the time.
Exhibit 91. What do we have here?
We have more blood stains on, this is the eastern wall of the exterior of the toilet room.
And let's talk about these right here.
Those that, on this wall, I observed blood stains that were traveling in a downward and towards the south, which is the window, which is up at the top over here.
And in terms of how they were deposited there, do you have an opinion as how those were?
An impact to a blood source.
So something that was bleeding or had blood on it
In
struck.
close proximity to the wall.
Because of this wall here, can you now say it was, or not say, that it was more than one strike? In other words, it would be one strike here to the breach of the door here, and then another strike here. Is that what you can say? Or can you say it's the same strike and the blood went through the wall?
I would not say the blood went through the wall.
So how many strikes are you looking at there?
Then we're looking at two different strikes or events.
At least, right?
Correct.
It could be more, right?
Correct.
And because they are so diffuse, does that give you an indication as to how many there were or not?
How many strikes there were?
Right. Mhm.
No.
So it still could be one strike, right?
Correct.
You see this down here? Is that also blood right down here?
I'd
Or
have
not?
to see another shot of it. I'm not
Okay,
certain in that
we'll get
shot.
another one for you to look at.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be back in the designated area at 1:25. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice lunch. You are excused.
When we broke for the recess, correct?
correct.
Exhibit 91 was what we were talking about. Judge, I think you may have to turn on the thing for me. It's not on. And Exhibit 91, this is what we were talking about, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated that there was at least 2 strikes so far, correct?
Correct.
If we go back to exhibit number 83, and I'm not talking about strikes, I'm just talking about areas at this time, it would seem that there are 3, based on what we see here, there are 3 separate areas where the source of blood was, correct?
Correct.
And part of the reason would be that the one that's exhibit number 86, this area of the door, plus exhibit number 91, this area here, and then what we looked at here, exhibit number 83, are not joined, if you will, or connected in any way, right?
Right.
Okay, exhibit number 94. We talked about the wall in exhibit number 91, right?
Correct.
And how about down here on the ground? What kind of drops are those?
Those are bloodstains that I wouldn't offer an opinion whether those could be passive or be ones that hit the ground from the impact on that west wall, on the east wall.
And why is that?
Because they didn't offer enough characteristics to make a determination.
And they could be related to the ones on the wall, they could not, right?
Correct.
Now, to the right of that, we also see some other staining. Do you see that right there?
I do.
And is it your opinion that this on the left, is that related or not related to those on the right?
May or may not.
And why do you say may or may not?
There's nothing distinct, a pattern to recognize. They're just blood droplets, and just a few blood droplets don't always create a pattern.
One of the things that we talked about was whether it's a passive placing of the drop versus an active placing. Is this something that gravity acted upon these here, or is it something that you can't tell us?
I can't tell. When I talked about the passive drops, one of the ways that we identify those is because they are nice, round, 90-degree drops when they impact the surface like this. So they're nice and round. Those aren't as pretty, so to speak, so I wouldn't want to offer an opinion on that.
Exhibit number 95, and what are we looking at here in terms of the scale?
We're looking at a scale that is on the south end of the bathroom that has blood stains on top of and underneath the scale.
And did you examine this at the scene, or did you conduct your examination back at the lab?
I observed it at the scene and then also examined it back in the laboratory.
What did you do at the lab?
At the laboratory, I did the Kasselmeyer testing, the preliminary test we discussed earlier on the staining up to I think I can touch this up in here.
Okay, and you did the Kasselmeyer test there?
I did the Kasselmeyer on that test there.
On top or on
that
bottom?
Stain. On the top.
And did you do any Kasselmeyer on the bottom?
No, I did not. That was actually at the crime scene.
Okay, and at the crime scene, when you did the Kasselmeyer, what part of it, the bottom of the scale, did you examine? Or did you not do the Kasselmeyer at the
I did not do any Kasselmeyer on the
All right.
on the bottom surface.
But there was a reddish substance that you believe to be blood underneath there, right?
This right here. Trying the technology.
That one right there. And knowing what you know about blood spatter, what is the scenario? How is it that this blood drop was stuck, if you will? Is it to the scale or is it to the floor?
It is on the floor. The stain is on the floor itself.
Okay, so if the scale is on top of it, what does it tell you about the stain that's there?
That the scale was moved into the position above the blood stain.
And do we have any issues about water with regard to this one or not?
No.
Exhibit number 96. Okay, right up against the wall here, do we see?
There are blood droplets.
And did you have occasion to look inside the wastebasket?
I did.
And what did you find in the wastebasket?
There was a paper towel and 2 empty toilet paper tubes, type cardboard rings.
Did they have anything or any indication of blood or anything that looked like blood in that wastebasket?
I examined the toilet paper tubes back in the laboratory, and my indications with my test were that there was blood detected.
So you now have what appears to be blood, in your belief it is blood, in the trash can there. You have it right again there. And then you also have it underneath the scale. How many events are we talking about here at this point?
Well, we've discussed that you counted 3 prior.
Right.
And then this is more bleeding, but I don't know how many events that are moving into the corner.
Would this be a separate event from the other involving the wall? This one over here.
The direction, it seems far to have it traveled, but I don't know that I could rule it out completely.
It's possible that it could be another event that was occurring in this area here.
Yes.
Just to orient ourselves, exhibit number 93. This is the scale we've been talking about, and the trash can is right here, correct?
That's correct.
And then we have the sink area, right?
Yes.
Exhibit number 98. What are we looking at here?
We're looking at the sink that is to the north. There's two sinks in the bathroom. This is the one to the north.
And we've been talking about events so far. We've talked about 3. Is this a separate event?
From the other, yes.
Let's start talking about this area here in front. It's, first of all, would you agree or disagree that the coloration of that seems to be a little bit different than the one inside the bowl?
I would.
And what would cause something like that?
It appears diluted as if it would be with water.
And exhibit number 100, as it applies to that, what are we looking at here?
The blood is dripping down the side of the ledge of the counter.
So in terms of what we've been talking about, passive versus active, what or how would you characterize this? How would you define it? Tell me about it.
Those diluted patterns, I would say, are evidence of transfer between a blood-bearing source and a non-blood-bearing source. But as I indicated earlier, I don't know if this is blood is present already and then something moves through it, or the blood is on another item and then transfers onto the counter, or a combination thereof.
But but bottom line is there is at least at some point the source placing the blood there, right?
Absolutely.
And at some point, something came by and swiped it, if you will. That's I think you call these swipes, right?
Swipes or wipes, yes, depending.
If we look to the left of that, do you see this right here?
I do.
Is that the same thing as what we've been looking at, or not?
Those are what we were previously discussing as passive drops that are simply being acted upon by gravity.
Let's look at Exhibit 105. Are those the ones we're talking about?
Yes.
And then a larger view of it, or 102. You see that?
Yes.
All right. Well, how could these blood drops here on Exhibit 105, how could they find their way to get there in that shape?
The blood source was above this location, above the sink.
And was
Edge of the
the
sink.
blood source, what was the blood source doing?
Bleeding.
I understand that, but was blood source moving left to right, moving front to back, or just stationary?
Well, depending which way, if that's it moving into the sink or backing up out of the sink,
All right.
but in some sort of motion over the sink.
At some point, there was some motion by the blood source over the sinks, and that's what that tells you, right?
Correct.
And it also tells you that, I guess it was over the top of the sink.
Over the top.
Is this partly a function of gravity?
Yes.
We've talked about those, and you indicated sort of in and out motion by the source. And then we talked about this source, or not this source, but this area here on the ledge. Both of those appear, from what you're telling me, to be somewhat movement-oriented, or would that be incorrect?
No, I'd say that. I would agree with that.
How about this area here, inside the bowl? And in terms of placement of the source, 103 shows it, and then also 104. You see that? Mm-hmm. Is that yes?
Yes, I see that. I'm sorry.
In terms of where the source was, and based on the patterns that you have there.
The source is above the sink, and some of those you can see are specific droplets. Some of them, because of the curvature of the sink, are merging together.
but the source of the blood is,
Above the sink.
do these also imply movement like those that are down here, or do they not?
Well, since they're in several different locations, it would imply that the blood source is moving a bit, yes.
Could all of these functions, Exhibit 104, the scraping there, or the swiping, the dropping of the blood there, let me see if I could focus a little bit more, and the middle of the tub of the sink, does that give you any indication of time, or can these all be done at the same time, or are they events that are occurring? There's one, there's another, we just don't know which is first. Why don't you tell me about that?
I would say that this movement at the edge of the sink could be concurrent with the drops that are into the sink.
Including the ones that are in the middle there.
Yes.
Exhibit number 98. See this area right over here
I do.
near the mirror?
I do.
Was there any blood spatter or any blood on the mirror?
There was. It's very difficult to see when we get to those shots because of the mirror, but there was.
There was some on the mirror. With regard to the blood on the mirror, or the substance on the mirror, what kind of action, or what can you tell me about those patterns?
When I was talking earlier about the categories, I discussed the projected blood that is that a force or a pressure acts upon to eject a volume of blood. This would be categorized in that category and could be a number of different mechanisms.
Sure, but let's just talk about, is this what Exhibit 100 is? Where was the blood? I understand that perhaps because of the flash we're not really able to see it, but if you could tell us where it would be or show us on the monitor there.
If I can get my finger to do the right working here. There were stains probably. If I have that about right, there would be. It wasn't as concentrated as this, but there, when you can see the photos, you can see similar to this up here.
And this right here, this event underneath it right there, is that the same kind of spatter?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not this spatter here was caused by the same event that caused the spatter?
It would be consistent with being from the same event.
Could it also be a second event?
Potentially.
And Exhibit 103, if you could clear it. This is what we're looking at here, right?
Yes.
Well, what about these heavier ones, heavier drops in there? What is that about?
There could be, this large one could be part of the passive drops that are down in the bottom of the sink. They can also just be larger blood stains that just drips together.
And if we take a look at exhibit number 101, are we then looking at this spatter? And again, my question is, how come some are dripping and some aren't?
Because when blood is acted upon with force, that not all, the blood droplets don't all break into the same size. And so some are going to be larger. And so some, when they hit that, have more of a weight or a volume, and therefore they drip down from the gravity. Because they're a larger stain.
What can cause this kind of spatter pattern?
A mechanism that might have done that.
Mm-hmm.
I earlier discussed the expirated, which was somebody maybe coughing or sneezing if they have blood in their airways, or from a wound, air forcing that out. The head is a very vascular area, and I don't know if you've ever nicked yourself shaving, then you know that those can bleed quite a bit. And a wound or a laceration to the head could cause the misting and the patterns that we see here, the size staining that we see here.
And what else? Anything else?
Gunshot wounds can produce that type of misting effect as well.
When you are examining these kinds of things, do you just look at it in a pattern without reference to anything else that's at the scene? Or do you also look at what may be around these patterns to provide guidance to you as to what, in your opinion, could be causing these patterns?
When we are at the scene, we are making observations of what those patterns are. What do they look like? What are their sizes? And then we use other information, such as investigators' information, the medical examiner's information, to make determinations on what potential mechanisms created those stains.
Do you also look at the area around it
Yes.
to potentially to see if there's anything else there? So, for example, in this case, exhibit number 114 shows us what? What are we looking at there?
There is a casing laying in a blood stain.
Well, tell me a little bit about this casing and how it was placed there based on your knowledge of blood spatter blood spatter training.
The blood stain was there, and the casing came and landed upon that.
If the casing falls into the blood, what does it tell you about the blood source in terms of sequence as to whether or not the blood source was already bleeding before the gunshot wound?
It would tell us the blood was already present, so the blood source was already bleeding prior to the gunshot.
So, I don't know about the sweet person, but what does it tell you in terms of this? Was the blood source already bleeding at the time that this casing somehow found its way into that blood?
Yes.
Approach.
With regard to that casing, in terms of when it was it placed in relation to the blood? When was that casing placed there in relation to the blood?
After the blood was deposited there.
So the blood source was already bleeding.
Yes.
So based on that, and based on, you indicated that you read the medical examiner's report? Correct?
Yes, I did.
And having read the medical examiner's report, having taken a look at that, what is your opinion then as to the source in exhibit number 101, or the mechanism as to how that pattern there was formed?
Then I would say that it would be either the expirated, the coughing, or a laceration to the head, one of those mechanisms,
But not the gunshot.
not the gunshot.
Let's take a look at exhibit number 116. Are you familiar with that area?
Yes, this is the linen closet to the north of the sink area.
And exhibit 117, what are we looking at there?
It's an accumulation of blood at the edge of the linen closet.
We keep talking about accumulation of blood. As it applies to this particular accumulation, is that an accumulation that took some time, or is that something that's immediate?
I don't know how much blood is there. It looks like a large amount. It would be a product of time, of the blood source being in one position for a little while, but I don't know how long.
And how was it formed? Do you know whether or not it's a product of gravity or perhaps the source laying down?
I do not know.
It could be any of those,
It
right?
could be those.
The fact that there is blood, for example, in different areas, does that tell you anything about what the blood source may have been doing?
Moving.
Do you have any idea, because of the blood being different places, Do you have any idea how fast or how slow the blood source may have been moving, or is that not something you just can't talk about?
Something I just couldn't say.
We then take a look at Exhibit 115 in terms of the item that we just looked at. What are we seeing here?
I'm looking for a better
Well, then let's take a look at 118. Is this a better one?
It is. There's a box within that linen closet that shows, as you can see these demarcations, that water, I didn't make the blue.
Why don't you clear that up a little bit, start all over. I think you ran your finger.
Finger too much. The markings, there we go, right in that area, show that bloody water has wicked up into the box.
And in this case, how can that be accomplished? How can we get this pattern that's on the box accomplished? How does that happen?
There would be water coming into the water. These other stains, this stain here has the diluted appearance on the edge. It's a lighter shade of red. You can see the diluted shades of, I don't know if I'm marking everywhere, the diluted shades of blood, and that simply travels up the box in a wicking motion, in a wicking action.
The fact that it looks like it's all the way around the box, does that speak to the volume of blood that was around this area, or is it you can have just a little bit of blood and then it sort of mushrooms out if you apply water to it?
I couldn't quite comment on the volume of blood other than you can still see the demarcation lines are very red, so it seems like it's not just a drop of blood in water.
Okay. We've seen this item there. Now if we look a little further on down, Exhibit 125, we see another one of those. Do you see that?
Yes.
What can you tell us about the fact that there's these very much larger circular areas of blood? What does that say about the source? Or can you tell us anything about what the source was doing? Well,
the source had, like I addressed earlier, that it could either be the action of the blood source being in one position there for a while, bleeding that accumulation, that little pool, or there could be some process of this with the water contact, it pooling in one area, but I'm not certain about that.
Okay. Exhibit 120. Are you familiar with item number 6 on this photograph?
No.
Are you familiar with having done screening on a hair follicle?
I did screening on a hair. I was not.
Why don't you take
certain that it was number 6.
Do you know whether or not the hair was at the number 6 location or not?
I would only be able to know a property ID number referencing my report, but I don't know.
Why don't you
that
go
off
ahead
the
and
top.
do that, all right? Sure.
Yes.
Let me go ahead and add it. Show you Exhibit 321, take a look at it. After you found what you were looking for, let me know, but don't read it out loud.
I found the property ID number for the one.
All right, go ahead and put the report back and tell me, did you do any work with regard to this number 6?
I know the property ID number.
Oh, I see. You need the property ID number?
I know that, can I look into my notes as well?
Sure, please,
Let me
go
see
ahead.
if that helps. If that was number 6LB, that's what I had it referenced as, 6LB.
All right, and what is 6LB?
Was a possible hair.
And what did you do with that possible hair back at the lab?
Back at the lab, I did my preliminary Kastle-Meyer test. Didn't get indications of blood, but on the end that appeared to possibly have a root ball, or had white material consistent with being a root, I processed that and sent it forward for DNA analysis.
Why did you focus on the root as opposed to the hair itself?
Because that's where we can get our DNA. That's where,
Is that where
our
the DNA
process-
resides?
Yes, for the way that we process DNA, yes.
Let's take a look at Exhibit 126. And for reference, you see this door trim there? You see that?
Is that the closet?
Well, why don't you take a look at it? And you take a look at it.
If that is the linen closet, that's what I'm just trying to orient myself.
All right. So where would this be then? If this were,
If that is the edge of the linen closet, then this is the west wall of the master bathroom hallway.
my question is, why is this area here much lighter than the other stains that we've been looking at?
Due to the contact with water. That water has spread over this area and has not affected the other areas as much.
See this area right here?
Yes.
What is that?
That would be a transfer stain, as we talked about earlier, a blood-bearing source coming into contact with another source, with another surface.
And so it's sort of a sliding kind of process there.
It is linear, so it could be sliding that way, correct?
Then exhibit number 127. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And what is this? What's going on here?
It appears to be the same. It's a transfer, again, a transfer pattern.
But why is it up here that it's just linear and down here we have it coming down? Do you see that?
There's more volume for one reason, for whatever reason, the contact with the blood source was more, there's more of a volume that caused it to drip down.
Exhibit number 129. See the door up here?
Yes,
And so which wall is this one right here?
that is the west wall.
As we look at this, part of the reason I want to talk about this is, what is this over here first?
That is the saturation stain on the carpet.
So that is carpet then, right?
Yes, that's carpet.
We see this right here. You see that little circle there, kind of half circle thing there? You see that?
I see the curve.
And then this area here is relatively clean. And then you follow this around and all the way back. It also appears to be relatively clean until you see this spot here and this other spot here that we've talked about previously. How is it, or what does that tell you in terms of the depositing of blood when you have a situation like this, and then you take a look at the left right there?
Or we can see that water has come into contact. It could be that water has gone through the entire middle.
But if water's gone through the middle, what's going on over here? And it seems to be in a round circle down here. Can you tell me how that happens?
Maybe there was something there that prevented it from that area being bloody.
Would it also be consistent with, for example, a cleaning utensil of some sort
It could be, yes.
coming through here and doing this?
Sure.
In looking at these along the wall here, is it a circumstance that the source is bleeding as it goes along there, or are any of those related to strikes, or is it just a situation that the source, as it passes through there, however it passes through there, is just depositing the blood? Is that what's going on?
It could be. They're not really in a pattern for me to determine this was where an impact occurred, this is where something else occurred. They're just a bunch of blood stains and some accumulations and the dilute factor. So I couldn't really talk about a specific incident each down that hall.
But could you tell me whether or not the source at least was in these areas to
Yes.
deposit that blood?
Yes.
And at the same time, was the source at least depositing blood on the left side of it?
Yes.
Now let's take a look at Exhibit 132. Is this the carpet?
Yes, it is.
If that's the carpet, what wall is this one?
That's the east wall.
And again, we see this up here. Do you see right above the switch there? Or not the
Yes.
switch, but the electrical outlet? And then this right here.
Right.
What could create that sort of circular half moon kind of pattern on the wall?
Any sort of the transfer, it's a transfer type stain, so anything that would be blood bearing coming into contact with it, or the blood being on the wall and something coming into contact with it and moving it along.
And then if we take a look at the area to the right of the switch in Exhibit 133, we see that circular pattern also, right?
Correct.
And so, and why is it coming down right to the right of that switch? What does that say?
Might just be a matter of the volume that contacted it right there.
This area here of the blood pattern going through there, does that speak to the height of the action of whether the source had blood or whether there was blood there? Is that what it speaks to, the height?
The height that the transfer occurred at, yes, would be,
And then underneath it is what we have here.
right.
Would it be consistent with the source being this high and then bleeding down? And these be a result of gravity?
Those could be from gravity. Because of the water, it makes them very difficult to determine them from a specific event, but they were clearly deposited there.
Why does the water make it difficult to do that?
Because it washes away the edges of any of the blood stains and makes them not regularly shaped, which is what we look for in identifying patterns.
Down here, you see this area here?
Yes,
Now, that area was cut out and we've taken a look at it. Have you actually taken a look at the rug yourself? The cutout?
I did see it when somebody else had it out, yes.
And so you did see it.
I did see it.
And with regard to this particular stain, this is exhibit number 131, what can you tell us about it?
But that is a large saturation stain, which means that it's a large pool, an accumulation of blood or a blood pool that's gone into an absorbent material, i.e. the carpet.
So can you tell us anything about whether or not the source was standing, kneeling, or whether or not the...
I couldn't define the position other than it was over that area.
What about right here? Do you see this one sort of seems, for lack of a better term, more pristine, whereas this one up here seems to be rubbed? Do you see that?
Yes.
What could cause that?
It could be any sort of contact with that stain.
Somebody walking through it could do that?
Absolutely.
Were you able to determine whether or not there had been any water applied to this area?
Not when we saw this side, but when we saw the underside, we did.
Okay, I'm asking about what you saw. Okay, so
Okay.
when you saw, did you see the underside?
I did see the underside.
On the underside, were you able, how is it that you were able to see whether or not water had been applied? How are you sure that you did see that?
Because there was the same way that looking down the hall, there was the dilute blood stains. You could see the light shade of red covering areas of the tile. It was very much diffused around this, under this carpet, under this stain, kind of the same coloration maybe as that, the box that was in the linen closet. So a lighter shade of red, implying it had been diluted and it had flowed down in that area.
And you were talking about, to take a look at Exhibit 115, you're talking about this box down here at the bottom.
Yes.
So the water that had been applied, were you able to tell if the water had come through the top or if it had just been in this direction? In other words, was the top wet or was it just the bottom? Or speak to me about the moisture on that.
Well, when we were at the scene, I don't recall it being wet, but looking at it from underneath, it had at least seeped through from the edge of the tile on, but I don't know how
Okay.
the mechanism for carpet.
Well, let me show you exhibit number 128. We see that same stain there on
Yes.
the left side. Then we look over here on the right. Do you see that on the right?
Yes.
What is going on with that?
It appears to be a lot of transfers, and part of that could be from either stains that have been disrupted by walking over them. It could be a product of the the diffused, the diluted blood flowing under and then it being walked on and coming up to the surface.
So
I
it could
can't make
be,
I can't make an absolute determination.
it could be, I think you used the word, did you use trampling? Trampling?
I said transfer, but are this, like the stepping could be, if there had been nice looking stains there, walking over it could have disrupted that and created this.
Does this imply a lot of walking or a little bit of walking?
Well, it's not a pristine looking area, so it would imply a lot of movement of some sort. Or
Could it also be-
contact of some sort.
Could it also be that, do you see that it sort of seems to end here?
Yes.
Did you see any that went this way? This walking motion, that, or if it was walking this way?
I mean, beyond this?
Yes,
Beyond
beyond
this,
this.
I never saw any blood beyond this area in the
So
bedroom.
this is the only area that you saw this staining of blood, right?
Correct.
Did you see any blood throughout the master bedroom anywhere other than right here in this area?
Just right here, and then I think there was maybe one stain or so right outside the closet here. Right over here.
Show me where.
Right here. I just wrote on top of it.
Okay, so was it a large stain or a small?
No, just a couple drops maybe.
Couple drops there? But did you see any near the bed, anywhere else?
No, no, I did not.
How about near the area where the bathroom goes into the closet? Did you see any blood staining there at all?
In the closet? No,
On the carpet at all?
no.
So with regard to this staining here, would it be consistent with, and if you know, you don't know, somebody sort of walking on this, for whatever reason they're walking on this particular area and not going into the bedroom,
Yes,
but perhaps going the other way?
perhaps, yes.
Let's see, look at exhibit number 78. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And was there any staining here? Was there any blood staining at all? That's the closet, right?
That's the closet. No.
And then we have something right here in the corner there. Do you see that?
Yes.
We then go to exhibit number 121. That's the area, right?
Correct.
Well, describe for me what's going on. What's the action?
Another transfer pattern, the contact between a blood-bearing source and another surface in a linear fashion.
As they're going by?
Yes.
Right? Did that extend in this direction in any way at all?
No.
So that we know where we're headed, exhibit 78. You see the number 2 there?
Yes.
Exhibit number 79 shows us that corner there, right?
Yes.
And right there is what at that turn?
That transfer again.
And exhibit 81 shows us, first of all, what is this part right here?
It appears it could be a transfer
No,
again.
I mean, what does it lead to? This
It
area?
leads to, it's the lip of the shower.
And is that where the body was?
Yes, it was.
And so we then see this right here, this reddish substance. Again, what does that mean in terms of arriving there at that place?
That something, a bloodstained source came into contact with it.
And is it the transfer pattern that you
It's
talked about?
consistent with the transfer, yes.
And is this a swipe or not? I mean, we've used that term also.
I would not be able to make a determination if the blood was there first and got wiped through, or if the thing that made the contact with the shower was blood
All right?
coated item.
If we then go back to exhibit 121, I'm going to focus in on this area here. Do you see that right there?
I do.
What is that?
It's called a pattern transfer, where you can actually identify a pattern within a transfer stain.
And the pattern that you have there, is that consistent with a barefoot? Is that consistent with socks, or is that consistent with shoes?
It's consistent with a shoe tread.
So it's not consistent with a barefoot,
Correct.
and it's not consistent with a sock.
Correct.
So if we look at exhibit 122, that's what we're looking at, right?
Yes.
And what's the direction of this particular stains. Which
It
we
is.
then, let me give you Exhibit 249. And I'll bring it in closer. It was right in this area, correct?
I think I just saw, can you lower it down a little bit? I think I saw where it says shoe tread right on the lip there, shoe impression. Somebody
Okay.
says they're drawing.
What was the direction of that print?
It was,
All right. And that's the direction of this footprint that we have here. If you could
Yes.
clear it out for me.
yeah, sorry.
Exhibit 162. See this right here?
Yes, I do.
Is that a shoe or is that a sock?
Appears to be a sock.
Would this sock make in Exhibit 122 this pattern?
No, it would not.
Go back to this photograph, Exhibit number 162. See that down there? What is that?
A foot.
Is
A
that
barefoot.
foot? Does that foot have a sock on there?
Doesn't appear to.
Does it have a shoe on there?
No, it does not.
Could that foot have made that pattern that we see there?
No, it could not.
What does it mean when this pattern is in what, blood, right?
Correct.
What does it mean in terms of the individual who wore this shoe, in terms of the sequencing and how this blood could have arrived there?
That they were walking through the bathroom after blood was shed.
And after they were wearing shoes?
And after they were, yes, correct.
I don't have any other questions.
Cross-examination.
Ms. Berry, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to begin, before we get into some of the other things we talked about being at the crime scene, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And a few moments ago, I think recently enough, I won't show you the picture again. The state showed you a bit of blood that was on the lip of the shower.
Correct.
Or the base of the shower, right?
Yes.
Okay. In the shower stall, the walls, everything that encased it, was there any blood found there?
On the floor only.
Okay, on the floor only, not on the walls?
No.
Okay. And no traces of blood on any of the walls, correct?
No.
Testing, okay. Now, I just want to go back to Exhibit 249. I believe this will demonstrate things a little better than the photos. A few moments ago, Mr. Martinez showed you the pool of blood that is denoted that was in the carpet that's denoted by this area. Do you recall seeing that?
I did.
Okay. And he asked you some questions about if there was any blood any farther inside the room than that point where the blood ended in the pool.
Correct.
Okay. And you mentioned a few drops that were over towards the closet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But you said there was no blood in the closet.
No blood in the closet.
And it seemed to me what the implication here was in terms of what you were saying is that someone could not have walked through the blood-covered carpet into the closet without bringing some trace of blood with them. Is that accurate?
It seems like a logical explanation,
Okay.
yes.
So, and ultimately what we're really saying, whether it's into the closet or not, no one would have walked through that pool of blood once it was deposited. Is that accurate?
Nobody would have walked through,
Walked through it because we would have seen signs of transfer, at least towards the room, I should say.
but towards the bedroom, I didn't see anything beyond that one little area. Whether somebody would walk through, I don't know.
Right, and if I was unclear,
Okay,
I
sorry.
apologize. but no, you wouldn't see, there's no evidence of somebody having walked through after that blood was deposited there.
Correct.
Is that correct? That's all I have. Thank you.
Any redirect?
With regard to somebody either walking through that area into the bedroom, where have we looked at that has all of the blood in it?
So all the blood is in the blood is in the master bathroom and that area of the carpet.
And in the master bathroom, is there something called water?
Yes.
Was water used in this case as part of an attempt by whoever it was to sort of change the patterns there?
Overruled.
Can you, no, after that pause, can you restate the question? Sorry.
Could you read it back to her?
Was water used in this case as part of an attempt by whoever it was to sort of change the matter?
I would say water did change the matter. As to the motivation, I wouldn't want to speculate on that, but water did alter what I saw.
And that water that was used in there, could that water also be used, for example, to wash, I don't know, hands? Could they also be done to do that?
Yes.
Could it also be done to, for example, clean feet? Could it be done to do that?
Yes.
And water, do you know what a towel is?
Yes.
Could a towel then, after water was used, could that be used to wipe up feet and hands and that sort of thing?
Way beyond the scope.
Sustained.
You were asked whether or not you saw anything or any other blood, if you will, Exhibit 249, in this area here, right?
Correct.
With regard to the properties of blood, is it difficult for water to clean them off the body, for example, the hands?
To wash blood off the hands?
Right.
No.
I don't have any other questions.
Looks like we have a few questions from the jury. Are there any other questions? Counsel, please approach. All right, the jurors have some questions for you. Is it possible for the shower to have been completely cleaned of blood on the walls and door with water?
It would wash away the appearance of it, so you wouldn't necessarily be able to see anything if you put enough water on it.
would there have been some trace even if washed?
If we had done testing, we might have been able to prove that, yes.
Is there a way to measure the volume of blood in the rooms? And if so, where most of the blood was located?
As far as measuring a quantity of blood, it's really, I would say, more of a medical professional's opinion to be able to offer that. I could just say that it was an accumulation and there seemed to be quite a substantial amount of it, but I couldn't offer an opinion of how many milliliters it was.
Any other questions from the jury? Follow-up from the state?
No, thank you.
Mr. Nurmi?
Did I hear you correctly? You didn't test anything else in the shower?
In the shower, I did not do any testing in the shower.
By we, you mean Mesa Police Department?
Well, that I personally didn't conduct any testing. I don't know about other units.
Okay, thank you.
You may step down. The state may call its next witness.
Calls Detective Flores.
Detective Flores, do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Your name, sir?
Detective Esteban Flores.
And yesterday we were talking about the statement that you had or the telephonic conversation that you had with the defendant on June 25th of 2008, correct?
Yes.
And during that time, did you and she discuss her knowledge of the PIN numbers used by Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
And Exhibit 295, clip number 23, include that portion of the conversation.
Yes.
Move to the admission of Exhibit 295.
Are we approach?
You may. $295 is admitted.
Never give you his voicemail from his phone?
No.
Did you ever obtain it at any time? Or?
I didn't have it, but he had one PIN number that he always used, and that was 1220. I don't know if that was his voicemail PIN number too. Oh, and he had a garage PIN that I have too, which is different. His 1220 was his PIN for his ATM, because there were many times when he gave me his card to go get money.
Do you think he has his phone as well?
It's possible. I don't know what kind of. I mean, mine's not password protected. Oh, mine is password protected. Mine before it wasn't. So so the one for his ATM was Joseph Smith's birthday, so that's how I always remember that. And then he gave me the garage PIN number, which was 0187, and I think that was Chris Hughes' birthday.
Oh.
Sir, as part of this investigation, were the police able to learn whether or not there were any roommates that Mr. Alexander had?
Yes, he had 2 roommates at the time.
And with regard to those 2 roommates, what are their names?
I cannot remember their names top of my head right now.
Do you know Zachary Billings? Do you know
Yes, Zachary Billings.
And Enrique was the other one?
Yes.
With regard to those 2 individuals, did the police investigate their whereabouts at the time that this crime occurred?
Yes, we did.
And were you able to establish where they were at the time that this crime occurred?
Yes.
And were they associated in any way with this crime pursuant to your investigation?
They were not.
Sir, did you have occasion to view the Inside Edition interview that the defendant gave in September of 2008. Were you able to view that?
Yes, I was.
With regard to that, were you able to listen as she discussed the issue of whether or not she had killed Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
and also whether or not any jury would convict her?
Yes.
Are those two excerpts, exhibits number 247 and 248?
Yes, they were.
I move for the admission of exhibits 247 and 248.
May we approach?
You may. Exhibits 247 and 248 are admitted.
Go listen to exhibit number 247. This is exhibit 247.
I understand that everything, all of the evidence against me right now is very compelling.
What really happened in there?
In a nutshell, 2 people took Travis's life, 2 monsters.
You did not shoot Travis.
No, I've never even shot a real gun.
You did not stab him 27 times.
That's heinous.
Or
I've never.
slit his throat from ear to ear.
I can't imagine slitting anyone's throat.
So let's take a look at exhibit number 248.
No jury is going to convict me
Why not?
because I'm innocent, and you can mark my words on that one. No jury will convict me.
I don't have any other questions at this time.
Cross-examination. You may. You may proceed.
Hello again, Detective.
Hello.
Days back, I guess it was yesterday, we heard some excerpts of a call you had with Miss Arias, I believe, on the 25th of June. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And I think we heard you say that entire conversation was about an hour and 45 minutes, the one we heard excerpts from?
Yeah, it was over an hour.
Okay. And during that phone conversation, you talked to her about how prior to her move, remember there was discussion about her move in April of 2008?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And during that discussion, you talked about how she talked about how she lived with Mr. Alexander for 4 or 5 days. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. Was that anything you discussed with Mr. Alexander's roommates? Do you have any knowledge if they knew about that or not?
No, I did not ask them about that.
Okay. And during that same line of questioning, I guess, when she talked about moving back home to Wairika, there was some discussion about phone calls or phone contacts she had with Mr. Alexander subsequent to moving back to Wairika. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And do the phone records bear that out? The phone records you obtained bear that out, that the two were conversing after she returned in April?
I would have to look at the phone records to be absolutely positive.
Okay.
I know they had constant contact back and forth with each other.
Okay. And there wasn't a point in time where that ceased for a long period of time, it would seem, right?
No.
Okay. So I guess we could assume then that probably took place in April, May of 2008, right? That phone contact.
Could have.
Okay. Now, there was also another case mentioned around the same time period. Miss Arias mentioned that she trashed his car.
Yes.
Do you recall that? And I just wanted to put it in context because of the excerpts. We were talking about an incident where a U-Haul dolly was involved and the engine exploded. That's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, it was an accident. Yes.
Okay. Just a minute, Your Honor. I want to talk to you about, well, let's back way up a bit here, because I think you probably told us this the first time you took the stand, but could you remind us again how long you've worked for the Mesa Police Department?
19 years.
Okay. And how long you've been a detective?
For about, since 2002.
Okay. So I'm guessing way back when, 19 years ago, when you started as a patrol officer, I would assume?
Yes.
Okay. That you went through the academy, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And while you were at the academy, you probably learned the importance of report writing.
Yes.
Correct? And when I say report, we're talking about departmental reports. Sometimes we call them DRs.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. And one of the things you probably learned is it's important to be honest and accurate as possible in those police reports because they could be used later on in proceedings such as these, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I suspect, and detective's a promotion, correct?
Not really in my department. It's more just like a lateral move. It's a specialty.
Okay, it's a special unit. But over the course of your career, I suspect you attempted to endeavor in becoming a detective. You expected to endeavor to make the most accurate and honest police report you could. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Yes.
Have you reviewed your police report recently, Detective?
Within the last few weeks. Yes.
Okay. Well, let me maybe get a copy of it for you. Your Honor, if I may approach.
Yes.
Detective, it appears your report has been marked as Exhibit 290. You could do me a favor, and I opened it to page 17 for you. Read all the way the portion of it begins with autopsy and ending at the portion just to yourself that begins with initial interview with Chris and Sky Hughes. Could you review that for me, please?
Sure. Said beginning with autopsy?
Yes, I believe that's the very bottom of page 17. Your discussion of the autopsy goes to the middle of page 18.
Okay.
All right. And based on what we read there, it appears that you attended the autopsy of Mr. Alexander on 6/12 of 2008. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And just so we're clear as well, I see on your report
State your question.
it appears you authored your report on August 27th, 2008. Is that correct?
All right, you may answer.
Yes, August 27th.
Okay. And just so we're clear, is that the day you wrote it, or do you is that the date it's finalized? How does that work?
That's the day it was, this section of the report, or this portion of it, was entered into our report management system.
Okay. So prior to writing a report, you take notes, something of that nature?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And then you get together at a certain point in time and put it together?
Yes.
And the final draft, so to speak, is what we're talking about of 8/27/2008?
Yes, and it gives it that timestamp of when it was finally entered.
All right. And in that report, you communicate, or it seems like you learned the fact that
Possessing hearsay is a quote from the report, improper impeachment.
Restate your question.
right, and finished it. But it appears that you came away from that autopsy with the knowledge, or with the belief, that Mr. Alexander had been shot first. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you base that on your conversation with Dr. Horn, excuse me.
With my observations through the observation window, and also with a small conversation with the doctor.
Okay. And then do you recall on August 7th of 2009 giving some testimony in court related to this case?
Yes, it's almost a year later.
Yes. In a moment. Your Honor, if I may approach the witness.
You may.
Detective, this has been marked as Exhibit 260. I'm going to place it before you for now, and you probably don't remember what you said exactly. As you pointed out, it was almost a year later to the police report that you wrote. But you were under oath when you gave this testimony, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you could be so kind, let's see here, as to turn to page 18 of that document. And I'll draw your attention to line 14.
Yes.
And you were asked there if you had spoken to Dr. Horn about this case.
Hearsay.
It's sworn testimony, Judge.
Approach, please. Continue.
You were asked if you, on that day, you were asked if you had spoken to Dr. Horn about this case. Is that correct?
Objection, improper.
Overruled. You may answer that question. Yes.
Yes.
And you recall the answer you gave?
I stated I did.
Okay. And when did that conversation take place?
A day prior to this hearing.
Okay. So your conversation with Dr. Horn then would have took place on August 6, 2009?
Yes.
Okay. And you were in court for his testimony, correct?
I don't recall if I was or not.
Okay. Did you hear him testify to the idea that he didn't talk to you on August 6, 2009?
Objection states Dr. Horn's statement. He said he doesn't remember.
All right, so your testimony was that you spoke to Dr. Horn one day before you gave this testimony.
Are you talking about this testimony?
Yes. It's not testimony today, but testimony here. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And in that testimony, you were asked about the sequencing of injuries according to Dr. Horn. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And you were asked about, in terms of sequencing, which came first? Which wound came first, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you recall what your answer was?
I answered that the gunshot was possibly first.
Okay. And what did you base your answer on?
Well, I'd spoken to Dr. Horn the day before over the phone on a short conversation, knowing that I was having a hearing on this matter. And I discussed mainly what kind of pain the victim would have gone through at that time, if the victim had suffered at that time, those kinds of questions.
Okay.
And during that, we kind of discussed some other things, and one of them was very briefly the sequencing.
Okay. Well, you say very briefly, but this would be important if you're giving sworn testimony in court, right?
The sequencing was not that important in this case at that time.
So you felt it wasn't important to give accurate testimony in court in your prior proceedings? Is that what you're telling me?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the most important portion was the whether the victim, Travis Alexander, suffered in this
Let me
case
ask
or
you
not.
not what's the most important portion. Let's focus on what I asked. What I asked was whether or not it was important to give accurate testimony when you're testifying in a court.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And you did testify to the idea that the gunshot wound to the head was first, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you went on, you were asked also in that hearing, and you also talked about unconsciousness and that sort of thing. But you also talked about whether or not after incurring the shot to the head, Mr. Alexander could be conscious. Do you recall being asked that?
Yes.
Okay. And you relayed, do you recall relaying the opinion that Mr. Alexander would be conscious after being suffering the shot to the head?
Yes, but that was my opinion at that time.
That was your opinion, but so you weren't relaying Dr. Horn's opinion as you said during those transcripts, you were relaying your own?
I would say that was my understanding of what the situation was, but I'm not the doctor, I'm not the ultimate decision maker on that.
So your claim here today is that when you were at this important proceeding in this death penalty case, you were giving your opinion as to what you thought Dr. Horn might think, as opposed to when you were testifying, you told the parties involved there that you'd spoken to him and this is what he believed.
That was my understanding.
You also gave opinions about that supported this theory that Mr. Alexander had been shot first, correct?
Yes, I do recall that.
Okay. I mean, specifically, you talked about that he aspirated blood over the sink, correct?
Yes, I do remember that.
And what does that mean?
Aspirated blood means blood being aspirated through the mouth and through the nose and onto an object such as the sink or the mirror in this case.
Okay. So now you said, it was your misunderstanding of Dr. Horn's testimony and that sort of thing. And you said you weren't sure if you were here in court, but in these court proceedings, is this the first you heard of a different story being told about when the wounds occurred?
No.
You've heard about it before?
Yes, during Dr. Horn's testimony.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about another testimony Dr. Horn gave, but I was here during his testimony the other day.
Okay. So during this trial, Dr. Horn's testimony, you were here, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay. I want to be accurate this time. And you heard him testify then that he hadn't spoken with you the day before the hearing, correct?
Objection states his testimony. He said he didn't know.
Sustained.
You heard him also testify that says some of the things that we just talked about not losing consciousness, how that was something that he would never have said. You heard him say that?
Yes.
Okay. But that's what you testified to at the hearing.
Yes.
Okay. And so this change of story is something that you first heard about at trial.
No, it's not the first time I've heard of it.
Okay. When was the first time you heard this story changed?
I don't remember. It might be several months ago or a year ago.
What was the context?
I don't recall exactly, but I know Dr. Horn had gone and given an interview, I guess, with you and defense counsel, and something came out to me informing me of what he stated during the interview.
Okay. Did you make any attempts to correct the mistaken testimony you gave in 2009?
No, because I told the truth and spoke to what I believed at that time. I'm not about to change my testimony.
But it was inaccurate.
It was not inaccurate, it was mistaken.
Mistaken,
And
I see.
that's my mistake if I mistook his words or misunderstood him, but I am not a doctor and I'm not about to give testimony on experience of a doctor.
I'm not saying you're a doctor, detective. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying, and we just talked about it, about the importance of giving accurate testimony. And in this hearing, you were asked specifically, if you talked to Dr. Horn, you said yes. You were asked if Dr. Horn had an opinion of the sequencing of the injuries. Right?
Yes.
Overruled.
They didn't ask you, what do you think, Detective Flores? What's your medical opinion? They didn't ask you that, did they?
No.
They asked you, what was Dr. Horn's opinion? And that's a pretty simple question, straightforward, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so what you're telling us today is that you substituted your judgment for his? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, if I gave that testimony, it was a misunderstanding of what Dr. Horn told me.
Okay. So, it's inaccurate, is what you're saying today?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what I asked you a few moments ago. Did you take any steps to correct your inaccurate testimony? And you said, no, it wasn't inaccurate. It was a misunderstanding.
Yes.
I'm confused. Well, is it inaccurate or is it a misunderstanding? Which is it?
Well, it's a misunderstanding of what Dr. Horn told me.
Okay, it's a pretty big one, isn't it?
No, I don't believe so.
You don't believe so? Okay. Judge, if we could take a break at this point in time.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the afternoon recess at this time. Please be back in the designated area at 10 minutes after 3. Please remember the admonition. You are excused. Counsel, for just a moment. Record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Nurmi, you may continue with cross-examination.
Detective, this hearing on August 29th, who is representing the state at that hearing?
29th or August 7th. Is that the one you're talking about?
August 7th. I'm sorry if I said another date. I apologize. August 7th, 2009. Who is representing the state?
I believe it was Mr.
Goes to motive and bias.
Overruled. You may answer. You may.
Who was the prosecutor? Who represented the state at that hearing?
It was Mr. Martinez.
Okay. And earlier, you testified that you said it was a misunderstanding or your mistake. Your testimony that day was a mistake, right?
No, my testimony wasn't a mistake. The portion of sequencing was a misunderstanding I had with Dr. Horn.
Okay. Well, you were asked some pretty specific questions. You were asked if it was Dr. Horn's opinion that this rendered the victim unconscious, or did he still remain conscious? That's a pretty specific question, right?
Yes.
And you answered, he said it would have possibly rendered the victim unconscious, but definitely could have been conscious, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You also said, or you were asked, but in the circumstance based on all the other injuries, it was his opinion that it did not render him unconscious, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you say that you misunderstood that, you misunderstood Dr. Horn. That's your testimony here today, right?
In the conversation I had with him prior to that hearing, I had spoken to him regarding the anguish, the amount of pain, the suffering that Travis would have gone through that day.
I'm going to object. It's non-responsive in 403.
Sustained.
Can you repeat the question?
I'm asking that you're claiming that what you said in that was a misunderstanding of Dr. Horn's, your conversation with Dr. Horn.
Yes.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yes.
And, you know, we've seen Miss Arias have interviews on television. You gave one as well, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And do you recall who that was for?
I believe it was CBS.
Okay. And my recollection, you would probably know better than I, but that appeared to be a pretty lengthy interview. Is that correct?
Hour or so, maybe.
Over an hour, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. And in that particular occasion, you offered the same theory that Mr. Alexander had been shot first. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you did that on a couple of different occasions. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I believed.
Okay. And so, but this was based on your misunderstanding of Dr. Horn. That's what you're telling us, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you repeated this misunderstanding. You put this misunderstanding first in your police report, right?
Yes.
And second time, under oath and giving sworn testimony, you perpetrated the same misunderstanding. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then again, you did it while being interviewed on national television. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I believed.
Okay. Thank you, Detective.
Redirect.
Sir, with regard to the police report that was from you in terms of the sequencing of the shots, take a look at it again and see whether or not anywhere in Exhibit 290, starting with DA 00018, and then going to the previous page, which is 17, whether or not you ever indicate a sequencing of injuries, ever.
No.
It doesn't indicate that, does it?
No, it does not.
In fact, with regard to that, do you talk about the wounds that the victim received, yes or no?
Yes, I do.
Do you talk about the lacerations and the puncture wounds and the length that they might be?
Yes.
Do you talk about whether or not there was stippling to those wounds?
Yes.
Do you talk about a report as to which injuries may have been fatal or not?
Yes.
Do you also talk about the knife wounds in the back and how far they went in?
Yes, I did.
Do you talk about whether or not those were fatal?
Yes.
Do you talk about whether or not the victim had any defensive wounds to him?
Yes,
Do you talk about whether or not he attempted to protect himself during the attack?
I did.
Do you talk about whether the fatal wounds consisted of stab wounds to the center of the chest? Did you talk about that?
Yes,
Did you talk about what damage that wound caused?
yes, I did.
And did you talk about whether or not the wound to the throat was fatal?
Yes,
And then you also talked about the manner of death, whatever that may have been, right?
correct.
Anywhere there, do you talk about any sequencing at all?
There's no sequencing in there at all.
And this was written when? Why don't you tell me again when this was written?
It was written in August of that year?
2008?
Yes.
Why don't you just take a look at it and see what date it was actually written?
It was written and submitted on August 27th of 2008 at 4:29 p.m.
And nowhere do you indicate any sequencing, do you?
No,
Do you ever indicate anywhere here that Dr. Horn said or gave you a sequencing of events?
no,
Or injuries, I'm sorry. Do you?
no.
With regard to Exhibit 260, that was a hearing in which you testified at, correct?
Yes, it was.
It was under oath, wasn't it?
Yes,
Prior to that hearing, did you speak to Dr. Horn?
yes, the day prior.
With regard to speaking to Dr. Horn, did you speak to him about any potential suffering by the victim?
That was the main focus.
Overruled to that question.
With regard to that particular conversation that you had, and the defense attorney, was it somebody else at that time?
Yes,
And there was
yes, yes, it was.
and there was more than one, wasn't there?
Yes,
And with regard to that, you were asked about Dr. Horn. He did, the question was, he did indicate that he was not certain as to which came first, correct?
correct.
And you were asked as to which injuries the belief was came first. Do you remember being asked that?
Yes,
And do you remember then that the defense attorneys objected because you didn't know what you were talking about? Do you remember that?
Overruled.
Do you remember them objecting to foundation because you didn't know what you were talking about?
yes, I do remember that.
Are you a medical doctor?
No, I'm not.
But you were allowed to testify anyway, right?
Yes,
Because of the type of hearing that it was, wasn't it?
yes,
And was it your understanding, just your understanding, that whether or not hearsay was allowed at that hearing?
Objection calls for legal.
Question was his understanding?
His understanding.
Overruled.
yes.
And could you tell us what you thought Dr. Horn had said?
I thought Dr. Horn,
Yeah, but you could tell us what you thought Dr. Horn said, right?
yes,
And you told us what you thought he said, right?
I did.
Were you correct?
No, I was not.
And with regard to the opinion that you gave, prior to giving that opinion, you know who Lisa Perry is, don't you?
Yes,
Who is she?
she works for the Mesa Police Department lab.
And Lisa Perry, did you talk to her before rendering that opinion back in August of, what was it, 2009?
Yes,
Did you talk to her?
I talked to her on many occasions, yes.
But did you talk to her in anticipation of that hearing?
Yes,
And did she give you any opinions that you incorporated, yes or no?
yes, a few.
And still you went ahead with what you thought was your opinion, right?
Yes,
And your opinion was based on conversations with Dr. Horn. Those conversations with Dr. Horn, were they recorded?
no, they were not.
And were they in person or telephonic?
Telephonic.
And the majority of the time, what was the subject area that you were spent talking about?
The suffering of the victim.
Did he ever write anything to you, giving you the sequence of events?
No, he never did.
Did you ever see anything written by him indicating anything of the sequencing of events?
No,
So the bottom line, that information that you gave, whose opinion was it? Was it yours or Dr. Horn's?
it was my opinion.
I don't have anything else.
Can you approach, Your Honor?
You may. Are there any questions from the jury for this witness? You may step down. The state may call its next witness.
The state calls Jody.
Can you spell your first and last name?
Jody, Jodi, Legg, Legg.
Raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Please walk around and have a seat.
Your name, please,
Jody, Legg.
and who do you work for?
I work for the City of Mesa Crime Lab.
What do you do there at the crime lab?
I'm a forensic scientist 3. I work in the biology department.
And what do you do there in the biology department?
I specifically analyze evidence for the presence of DNA. Hopes to get a DNA profile.
One of the things that we've learned earlier today is that there's a screener that's involved. You know what a screener is, correct?
Yes.
What is a screener? Well, are you the same thing as a screener?
When we say screener, another term for that is serologist.
Right.
And the screener or the serologist is the person that actually looks at the evidence up front and decides what areas to swab or to cut in order to send through to DNA. And so prior to moving on to DNA, you would be trained, all people would be trained as a serologist. And so yes, I am a screener and a DNA analyst.
How does your job differ from that of a screener?
My job as a DNA analyst, I accept the evidence from the screener and then perform DNA analysis on that particular item. I don't necessarily look at each item and decide what area to cut or swab.
What is your educational background, for example, your college background, and then we'll talk a little bit about your training.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from SLU in Louisiana. I have numerous classes in chemistry and biology, postgraduate level, and in-house training and external training.
How long have you been in the position that you're in where you actually conduct DNA testing?
I have been with the City of Mesa since 2004. Prior to that, I have 15 years of experience as a research chemist, not in a forensics field.
And with regard to DNA, I think we sort of know what that is, but what is DNA? First of all, what does it stand for?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's actually the genetic information that is held inside our cells, in the nuclei of the cells. It comes from our mother and father. It's inherited.
And, well, my question is this. Everyone has this DNA. Correct?
Everyone has DNA.
And just by way of illustration only, doesn't everybody have, for example, one head, 2 arms, 2 legs, that sort of thing, 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth, right?
Correct. For the most part, all of us are very much alike. There's only a very small portion of our DNA that is completely unique to us.
So I guess what I'm asking is, the type of work that you do, what is it that you do that allows you to, for example, differentiate the biological substance from that of somebody else if most of the DNA is the same?
The specific locations that we look at in forensic DNA analysis are locations that would be specific to an individual.
So those are the ones that, if you look at, they're the ones that differentiate that individuals amongst ourselves? Is that how it works?
Those are the very low percentage of locations that are differentiate.
And if you want to, once you do this process, what does the result look like? Is it a graph that goes up and down? Is it numbers? Is it in writing? Exactly what is it that is the end result of the examination?
You will have a graphic representation and numbers, so you'll have peaks with numbers underneath.
With regard to the peaks and the numbers underneath, are you the one that actually interprets the peaks, or is that just automatically done by a machine?
The instrumentation will provide the graphs for you, then the analyst looks at it and compares it to known graphs and numbers to decide if there's a match or not.
And what area of, we're looking at chromosomes, right?
Correct.
Certain areas. How many areas of the chromosome do we look at?
16 different locations.
Right. Do you also look at the sex marker, as they call it?
Yes, it's called amylogenin.
Is that included in the 16, or is that 16 plus 1?
It's included in.
So you look at the sex marker, and then you look at 16 locations, is that right?
The sex marker plus 15 others.
I see. And if you look at location 1, whatever that may be, and you get the results, are the results numerical? Can they be numerical?
They can be numerical.
So when there's do you know what a profile is?
Yes, a profile would be the compilation of the numbers attributed to the peaks.
And so you look at, for example, the 15, do you know what the word loci is?
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Locations on the chromosome.
And so you look at these locations, and then you get one number, or what is it that you get?
You can get 1 or 2 numbers if it's a single individual. Each of us, like I said, we get the DNA from our parents, 1 from our mother and 1 from our father. So if your mother and father have the same, you may have 1 peak, but otherwise you can have 2 peaks. So a single profile, you'll have no more than 2. A mixture of more than you would have 3 or more.
Let's say that the contribution from the mother is a 12. Let's just pick that number. Okay. And the contribution from the father is a 12. You still report both locations, though, right?
Correct, but you'd only see a single peak.
Right, and it's still the same number, but it's still, you do report the 2 locations, though.
That's correct.
So that if you get a full profile at each location has 2 readings, correct? 2 numbers.
2 numbers associated with it.
1 associated with mom and 1 associated with the dad, right?
Correct.
And this profile, or these numbers, are then compared to the other profiles to see if there's a match, right?
That's correct.
And so what we're talking about is a matching of numbers.
Exactly.
And if, for example, at one of the areas, one of the loci, there is not a match, let's say that instead of a 12 and 12, and everything else matches, you have a 12 and 13, is that a match, sort of a match, or not, or not at all?
It depends on if there's any other information available in the graphical representation.
How about if you get 2 of them that are not the same? 12 and 12 of one, and the person that you're looking at is a 12 and a 13, and the other place is a 13 and 13, and the result is a 13 and a 14. Do you know what an exclusion is?
If there is no other numbers or peaks present, and a known sample is, say, a 12, 13, and then your graphical representation and the numbers was, say, a 13, 14, then it would be a no match. The person would be excluded.
In real life, I mean, obviously we don't get a situation where you could always get one pristine sample of the unknown, and then because people are always touching things and that sort of thing.
Correct.
What's that called? What happens if more than one person touches it, say 2 people?
You would end up with what's known as a mixture of DNA.
Even though it's a mixture, are you then able to still tell whether or not it's a match to 1 person, 2 people? Can you still do that?
Yes, you can.
In this case, how many known samples were submitted to you for comparison? The names, if you will. Do you have
I had 2 samples submitted.
Well, no, not samples, but known. In other words, do you know what a buccal swab is?
2 buccal swabs were submitted.
So only 2 buccal swabs of known people were submitted?
Correct.
Nobody. Okay. Who were they of?
One was of Jodi Arias and one was of Travis Alexander.
And with regard to Jodi Arias, did you develop this profile?
Yes.
And with regard to Mr. Alexander, did you develop this profile?
Yes.
Did you look at the profiles between the 2 of them to see if they matched each other?
They did not match each other.
So far so good, right?
Yes.
And in terms of the crime scene, did you receive a item that was purportedly near a wall, item 77 is what it was, for you to take a look at and submit it and check to see whether or not there was any DNA and whether or not you could develop a profile?
I received a swab from the wall.
All right. And were you able to develop a profile? First of all, was there any biological substances there?
There was biological substance in that a profile was developed.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part of my hearing.
A profile was developed.
Okay, and that profile, tell me about that profile.
It was a mixture of DNA.
And this mixture of DNA, this mixture profile, were you then able to compare it, for example, to Travis Alexander's profile?
Yes.
And when you did that, what were the results?
The mixture turned out to be the major contributor to
Let me stop you there. What do you mean when you say major contributor?
When you have a mixture of DNA, we were talking about earlier that you can have a graphical representation with peaks. You can look at it and see which peaks are larger. You're able to determine who gave more DNA to the profile than another. So a major profile can be picked out.
Right.
That major profile matched Jodi Arias.
Okay.
The remaining, what we would call a minor profile, the lesser contributor, matched Travis Alexander.
All right. So what does it mean that a person's a major contributor in terms of the quantity, I guess, of DNA, since we're talking major and minor?
The quantity you would assume that the quantity was higher because the peaks are larger for that contribution.
But was there a result at every one of the loci for Travis Alexander?
No.
So what does that mean that there wasn't a result at all of the loci?
It just means that there was not enough DNA present to develop a full profile.
Was there a full profile, enough DNA from Jodi Arias to have a full, if you will, profile?
No.
And so there was not a full profile for him, not a full profile for her, correct?
That's correct.
But even though that's there, were there any exclusions? In other words, could Jodi Arias be excluded?
No.
Could Mr. Alexander be excluded?
No.
So what is your opinion, I guess?
My opinion is that both of them were present in the profile.
And the biological substance that was submitted, was it blood or do you know?
I don't know.
You just know that it's some
It's a biological material.
How about with regard to the hair? Did you have anything to do with the root of a hair?
There was 2 pieces of hair that were submitted.
Okay.
One of the pieces contained a root, and the second piece was further up on the hair. So a hair, I believe it was a length of hair that was cut with one portion containing a root, and then the next portion was that piece right adjacent to it.
With regard to this hair, do you know whether or not it was item number 6 from the scene?
I don't know. We have property ID numbers that I deal with in the lab that are different than the item numbers at the scene.
Do you have any description on your report that indicates what number they may have been at the scene?
It would have been a 39 something. Can I refer to my report?
Sure,
I can
please,
give
go
you the
ahead.
numbers.
And again, Judge, under request if you want to.
Sure. If I can have
Do you need
this.
it? You want just that one? I'm so sorry.
Take a look at Exhibit 322 in terms of the hair, see if you could find out what item number it may have been.
It would be item number 392692-A.
But you don't know what item number it was out at the scene then?
I do not, I'm sorry.
Okay. But you did do a hair, right?
Yes.
And in terms of the actual hair part, not the root, were you able to get a result?
Not the root?
Not the root.
Okay, the hair was cut into 2 sections. So the part that did not contain the root, there was a profile developed that matched Travis Alexander. The portion of the hair that did contain the root matched to Jodi Arias.
So explain to me what we have here in terms of the part of the hair that matched Mr. Alexander. What are we talking about there?
There was biological material on top of the hair. With a hair and DNA analysis, you need a root material to do what's known as nuclear DNA. Our DNA is housed in the nucleus of the cells. And so for hair, if I pull my hair out and the root is present on the end of it, I can get a DNA profile from that root material, from that end only. If I go further up into the hair, and just take, a broken off piece that's just the shaft of the hair, there is no nuclei in that section. And so the two different sections are cut to say, okay, the root comes from this particular donor of a profile, and the next area of it, I can tell who does the substrate or the substance on top of the hair belong to.
So the substance on top of this hair that you examined, the profile matched who?
Travis Alexander.
How about the root? Who did that match?
The root matched Jodi Arias.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Your Honor, we have no questions from Ms. Legg.
Any questions from the jury for this witness? I see no hands. You may step down. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take the recess for the weekend. We will see you on Monday, 10:30 a.m. Please arrive by 10:25. Remember the admonition. Are there any questions? Have a nice weekend. You are excused.